Rev up your engines!
Well, you remember the car manufacturers were making all kinds of money because they're marking their cars up. Well, here's some news that maybe straighten them up. Ford lost $3.1 billion in the first quarter of 2022. Now, some of it is their investment in Rivian. Remember, Amazon bought a bit, Ford bought a bit, and the stock went high. Well, guess what? The stock's crashed down now because people are realizing this electric Rivian company, it's a pie-in-the-sky fantasy. Understand that Rivian was over $100 last year, and now it's down to $31 and falling. They claim, oh, we can make all these cars. They made a few trucks, right? And everybody's all excited. Oh, well, let's put our money in it. Now, well, gee, we can't make the amount of trucks that we thought we could. And then the stock market's like down to $31. So basically, it was fantasy money anyways. Ford got the stock cheap. Then when they were an IPO, it went bananas. And they said they were worth all this money, but now they aren't. It's a classic stock market fraud that you see all the time. They pump and they dump. Now, Ford, if they had any brains, what was $100 a share, they should have sold their stock. You hold on to those stocks, they all crash back down. I used to play the stock market. I see plenty of stocks. They went up $100, $200, $300. Then they get down to $5 because they were just a fantasy pump and dump that people were pulling. And if you remember, originally Ford said, well, we're going to use Rivian. We'll use their skateboard electric platform for making stuff, and then we can make Fords too, or give them the skateboard and Ford can put a body on it. Well, Ford nixed that deal a few months ago. They said, we're no longer going to be using Rivian skateboard. The Ford Lightning is their own electric truck they're building. It's having nothing to do with Rivian. They probably found out that Rivian was smoke and mirrors. Well, old Amazon, known for making wise decisions, made a stupid decision. They just lost $7.6 billion in Rivian stock. You know, they invested a lot of money in Rivian. They said, oh, Rivian's going to build us 100,000 delivery vehicles, right? Well, maybe not. Amazon invested $1.3 billion into Rivian originally. And then when they went to IPO, the stock went bananas, went over $100 a share. Oh, they made all this money, right? Well, maybe they should have sold it before it dropped. Now, Amazon said, oh, we're going to use electric trucks. They said, oh, we're going to buy 100,000 electric trucks by the year 2030 from Rivian. Well, now Rivian says they expect to only make 25,000 trucks each year. And that's what they expect. Obviously, they're probably going to make less than that. Who knows? The company might go bankrupt. They don't make hardly any, and they'll stop making them because they won't make any money. But not able to ramp up production. Who knows if they're going to have problems? They haven't been out that long. It's just nuts that people evaluated this Rivian company at $86 billion when they built a handful of trucks. People are just stupid. They'll invest in something. They have no idea. They go on a buzzword, electric vehicles. Oh, yes, electric trucks. Oh, it's the future. It's the future. Nobody knows. And nobody knows which company's going to be making it correctly. And they're going to make any money in it. Who knows? Especially electric trucks. It's a different breed of people buying trucks. Look at Tesla. He keeps promising the Cybertruck. Well, it's not out yet. It's still not out. He keeps saying next year. And Amazon itself, it owned 18% of Rivian. As the stock goes down, so does the value. Now, as usual, it's stock market, so it's just a valuation and it's fantasy to begin with. They have the brass balls that say this company's worth all this money. No, it isn't. It's just a fantasy. People think it is. And then when the reality, they can't build the trucks they said they're going to do, and it comes back down to earth, now it's $30 a share instead of 100 something. You got to understand, you don't invest into a company on the promises. You invest on them in the reality of what they can do, and they haven't been proven to do anything big yet. So Ford lost $4.9 billion, and Amazon lost $7.6 billion. But then again, it's not real. It's stock. They're evaluated, which is just a fantasy. They're all in a feeding frenzy like sharks. Oh, they're all going wild eating. All of a sudden, oh, all the other fish are gone, and oh, now what do we do? And then the value goes down. Phoenix 067 says, I've lost fourth gear. Okay, I have a 2006 Pontiac G6. Fourth gear does not work. Is it worth replacing the transmission or changing it to a manual? You lost fourth gear. Well, it's not like you lost, you can't find it. It's not working anymore. That's on those trannies often the first gear that goes out. The last gear is the gear that goes out. It's a 6-cylinder Pontiac, and it's an 06. It's not really worth anything. If it had been a V8 Pontiac, I'd definitely fix it. Those are collector's items. People like them, the V8s. But the 6-cylinder ones, dime a dozen. Nobody gives a crap about them. If you want to continue to drive it that way and just get worse gas mileage because it won't go into fourth gear, go ahead. If you do want to fix it, you got two real choices. You could take pot luck, buy a junkyard transmission, put it in, which is a gamble, or you could get a remanufactured one. It's going to cost you thousands of dollars. Or What the heck? You're saying, should I get rid of it? It still runs, but it doesn't go into fourth gear. If you're not in love with the car, sell it as is. And it shifts on the other gears. You can drive, people can road test it, and then they can do whatever they want with it. It's not really worth anything. And knowing how those things are, that one's 16 years old, going on 17. I wouldn't put much money into it. It wouldn't be worth it. And a used transmission, they almost all go out in a junkyard. You get one, it probably won't be any good either. Maybe there's some nut out that likes those cars. You never know. I had a customer selling Audi. I wouldn't have given him $500 for that car, but they found a German couple that gave him $7,000. I wouldn't have given them $500. So you never know what the market will bear until you get out there and try to sell it. Jesse9 says, how do I fix these diagnostic faults? I got a 14 Camry, and it's got P0441 and P0455. 441 is usually a vacuum switch or a leak in evac. There are these vacuum switches, and they go bad. And make sure that the hose is having faults. Sometimes people knock them off. The switch is right by the air filter. When you take the air filter off, sometimes you just knock off the stupid hose. And that could fix the entire problem. Could fix the other code too. Because P0455 is a large evap code. And if you did knock off a hose, it'll get that too. Now, large code could be a bad gas cap. You might just say, if you look under there and you don't see any hoses that fell off, change the gas cap. A gas cap can do both codes too. Fuel vapors that don't work right because the gas cap's loose and they're coming out the top instead of being sucked in. So it could just be a bad gas cap. So if you don't see any of the hoses under the hood by the air filters, rubber hoses, vacuum hoses, if you don't see any of them that fell off, and you just plug them back in, then change the gas cap. That could easily fix it. Now, let's say a hose did fall off. Here's my advice, and it works great, is put a little adhesive glue on the outside of the nipple, then push the rubber vacuum hose back on. That way, it will stick on, and it won't come off again. They will slide off when they get older, and that car, 9 years old, so the hoses sometimes just get old and they'll slide off. You can glue it on, then it would never come off again. Mr. Creedy says, my mechanic didn't change some serious parts that I paid for. How should I approach it? Back in December 2021, I took my car to a mechanic. I told him to change tires, change the oil filter, change the light bulb, and change both brake pads in the rear. My check brake lights came on, and I get a whining noise that I didn't hear before. I found out the brake pads in the rear are as close to worn out as they can be. So obviously, he did not change them. What can I do? How should I approach it? The problem is, that was December 2021. January, February, March, and most of April. Of course, you can wear them out that fast. He's just going to say, oh, you drive hard and you wear them out. He's probably going to lie to you. My best advice for this is stay the heck away from the guy. He didn't wreck your car at least, and I would go somewhere else, and I would Better Business Bureau and say, this guy's a scumbag. He charged me for work that he didn't do. Leave it at that. I would stay away from the guy because if somebody's crooked, they can keep cheating you and lying and stealing and trying to sell you stuff you don't need. They'll rip something and say, look, this is broken. It's ripped. You got to replace it. So I would just basically stay away from the guy. It's a cheap lesson. Brake pads don't cost much, but I wouldn't get involved with the dishonest guy. I would just report him to the Better Business Bureau and go elsewhere and just stay away from the guy. You can't change a leopard spots, and I wouldn't even try. If I were you, I'd just take it as a lesson learned that the next time you get work done, look at it. Get a flashlight, see, are those new parts? And if you're dealing with a mechanic where you don't trust, don't go there anymore. Find somebody who is. There's dishonest mechanics out there. Ask your friends who they use. Mohammed Polini says, how can I increase horsepower in my 2008 BMW 328i? 160,000 kilometers on it. I was wondering, how can I modify it to increase horsepower cheaply? You can't do it cheaply. You want real horsepower, costs money in any car. BMW, whatever, costs more than BMW because parts cost more. But there's nothing you can do changing the air filter crap like that, spark plugs, unless they're worn out. It isn't going to do anything. You either got to put on a supercharger or a turbocharger, which costs a fortune. And of course, you got an engine that's got what? Like 190,000 miles or something like that on it, because that's kilometers. It's going to wear out faster. Or rebuilding the engine with bigger pistons, better valves, cams, and that costs an even bigger fortune to do. Now, a 328i is a 6-cylinder engine. It's relatively fast. You should be happy with the way it is. But if you aren't, the cheapest way to do it is a supercharger, but that's still going to cost you thousands of dollars. You have to pay a mechanic to do it. You can't just bolt it on. The software has to be changed and all that stuff. It's a deal to get more horsepower. You don't get anything cheap. You either spend a whole bunch of money or you're happy with what you got. MD Action 14 says, should I change my differential fluid? I got a used 2014 Acura MD Axle 70,000 miles. I changed the transmission fluid every 10,000 miles. But what about the rear differential fluid? I don't know if anybody's ever changed it. Should I change it or can it hurt something? Change it. Differential fluid is splash lubrication. It's just splashed along. You change it, it's a good thing. If it's too dirty, what happens is the corrosion and dirt inside is like sandpaper. It will eat the seals, it'll start leaking, and it will also wear the gears. Since it's splashed lubrication, changing it hurts nothing. The differential's just splashed. The oil's just splashing. It's the same as a standard transmission. Change it more, the better. I mean, you don't need to change it maybe every 60,000 miles or something. It's good fluid, lasts a long time. And use the fluid it came with. Don't ever mix fluids because different ones have different qualities. Go buy it at the dealer, at the parts department, and change it that way. But since it's splashed lubrication, it won't hurt anything, and it's a good idea to do now. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.